Good evening, parents and students. My name is Mr. Strub. I'm the teacher of the Accelerated Geometry, and I'd like to take a minute here just to hopefully answer some questions that you may have about what Accelerated Geometry is and what are some important things coming up for the rest of trimester one. So first thing I'd like to do is talk about the difference between the accelerated versus the regular, because I usually answer that question often. So if a student is an accelerated, that means they're currently in my geometry class. I think of that as year one. Now, some students are sophomores, some students are freshmen. But what they're going to do is they're going to take geometry in the first two trimesters, and then of this year, they start accelerated algebra 2. Next year, oops, this should actually say algebra 2. So next year, then they would finish accelerated algebra 2 and start pre-calculus and finish that in trimesters 2 and 3. So if they're a freshman, their sophomore year, that means their junior year, they would be able to take calculus AB or BC. Now, if they're a 10th grader, that means they would reach calculus as a senior. And that's kind of the goal of accelerated, is go fast through the required courses in pre-calculus to get to calculus. So compared to a regular mainstream course, this is just geometry 1 year, algebra 2 the next year, and pre-calculus for the third year. Now, if a student is a sophomore currently in geometry, then they would not be able to reach calculus their senior year. They would be able to take pre-calc. So the reason why we have accelerated is to give the students an opportunity to get to calculus before they leave high school. All right, what about accelerated geometry? What are some important dates? The first thing we have is we had the Unit 2 test a while back. Students may still do test corrections on that, but they are due October 28th. I'll talk about how to do that in just a second. The Unit 3 proof project was due last Wednesday. That is still open for students to turn in. That is a 50-point summative project, and it probably takes, about a half an hour to complete. So something that could be done pretty quickly. The Unit 4 test is coming up on November 2nd or 3rd, depending on what hour your student is in my geometry class. And then we also will have a Unit 5 test on trigonometry on November 18th. That's a Wednesday where all students would take that test. All right, what if you don't do well on one of the unit tests? Well, we do have a remediation policy to earn points back. What you would do is you go back to the test that you took, and you would have to correct that test. And you would just take out a piece of paper, correct the problems you got wrong, and write a sentence on why you made a mistake on it and what you learned by going back through and fixing your mistake. And if a student does that for each problem they got wrong, they can earn up to 70% back of that test. So their grade could bump up to a 70 for that specific test. Corrections must be completed on a separate sheet of paper. When they are done, they're going to email them to Mr. Strub. So that's tstrub@isd622.org. And we'd like to get this done a week after the test scores are released. We opened up the Unit 2 one for a later date in case students were motivated from their parents attending conferences or getting this message. So we'll give them an opportunity to get that in. What about the grade? The official grade that a student has earned can be viewed through Campus or Parent Portal or Student Portal. The Schoology website is regarded as a site that distributes and collects homework, quizzes, and tests, and grades are updated weekly for sure, if not bi-weekly. I usually try to do them Wednesdays and Fridays. So what does a grade look like in Schoology versus Campus? Well, here's what a student's grade would look like in Schoology. The first thing to note is there is no official grade. There's not a letter grade or a percentage of their overall grade because we don't want Schoology and Campus to have different grades, which sometimes that can happen. So here's how I like to view Schoology. I think of it as formative work is 50% of your grade, and then you have a list of all the assignments. If there's a slash, that means that that student is missing the assignment and they have until the day of the current assessment to turn that in. If it's turned in with a score, it'll say 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10 or whatever score they earned. And I'll have a little box by it saying that this was turned in and it has been graded. But what if it is there is no grade by it, but there is a blue box. That means the student has turned it in, but the teacher still has to go through and grade that. And again, that should happen within the week if a student turns it in. Then we've got, more 5 out of 5s. But what happens if it says 0 out of 5? What that means, and you notice the date here, this was homework on September 11th. This was a 0 out of 5, which means it's past due. The student can no longer turn this assignment in, and they receive 0 credit because they did not do it. Notice here, this is my calculus class, but it's the same thing for geometry. They had a quiz, and for every quiz, they can retake their quizzes up to 20 times, and they can get whatever score they want. The student probably didn't take advantage of that because they got a 7 out of 11. And I don't really know why Schoology says 6.99 out of 11 instead of 7 out of 11. That's something I haven't figured out yet, but it's close enough to 7 out of 11. All right, so if we scroll down, notice here the student for our Unit 2, which was the beginning of October, had a lot of missing work that has not been turned in, and they still may turn those in because there's a dash there. So if there's a dash, you can still turn it in. And then we have the summative piece. We had our first test, 86%. Second test was about 55%. This student is eligible to do a remediation to raise their grade up to 70% if they follow the remediation process. So what would this same student's grade look like in Campus? Well, here it is. So this is their view through Parent Portal or Campus. And what does it have? What does it have? It has the current progress and current grade right here. It has their grade for the 4-week midterm. And then it has the summative category next. And so it's the 2 tests. Notice the 27.8 was the 56%. So the student did not take advantage of the remediation yet, and they could bump this grade up to a 70%, which would increase this overall grade quite a bit. And then what about the formative? Formative is 50% of your overall grade. That's quizzes and homework and any activities we do in class. Notice, if it says a 0 out of 5, that means that it's past due and the student no longer can turn it in. Here was their percentage from a quiz. Student could have done corrections on that to get more points back. If it says missing, that means that the student may still turn those in up until the day of the assessment. And this was all Unit 2 stuff, and calculus, we're taking that test coming up. All right, and then we've got, what if it says 0 out of 0, past due, or missing? So there's the story, and that's kind of the difference between Schoology and Campus. If you have any other questions, please reach out to me. My email again is tstrub@isd622.org. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the snowy day that we just had. All right, take care. Bye-bye.